In March 1922, a quiet Bavarian farmstead known as Hinterkaifeck became the scene of one of the most disturbing crimes in German history. The family living there, Andreas and Casilia Gruber, their daughter Victoria, her 2 children, and the maid were all found brutally murdered. What makes this case especially terrifying is that someone may have lived in the house for days before the killings. Strange footsteps were heard in the attic, keys went missing, and mysterious footprints in the snow appeared leading toward the farm, but none leaving it. The family was frightened, confused, and unaware that the horror waiting for them was far worse than anything they imagined. In the days before the murders, the family reported several disturbing incidents. Andreas Gruber told neighbors he discovered unfamiliar footprints in the snow leading straight to the farmhouse. He searched the property, but found no sign of anyone leaving. Inside the home, strange noises echoed from the attic at night, but every time he checked, no one was there. Doors were found unlocked, items moved unexpectedly, and the family's house keys mysteriously disappeared. Their new maid quit after claiming the house was haunted. 6 months later, the replacement maid arrived, only to meet the same tragic fate as the family. On March 31st, 1922, the killer made their move. It is believed that one by one, the family members were lured into the barn during the evening. Each victim was struck with a heavy mattock, a farming tool, before collapsing into the hay. The killer waited silently, ambushing the next person who entered. 4 bodies were later discovered stacked neatly on top of each other inside the barn. What disturbed investigators most was the calm and organized nature of the crime, suggesting the killer was patient, methodical, and perhaps someone the family knew. Inside the house, the tragedy continued. The maid was found murdered in her bedroom, and young Joseph, just 2 years old, was killed in his crib. Shockingly, investigators later determined that the killer stayed in the farmhouse after the murders. The fireplace had been used, meals had been eaten, and the animals were fed. This indicated the killer lived comfortably among the bodies for at least several days. When investigators searched the barn and the farmhouse, they noticed something chilling. There were no signs of forced entry. Every door, window, and lock appeared untouched. This suggested the killer either had a key or was already inside the property before the attacks began. Some neighbors later reported seeing a figure lurking around the farm in the days before the murders. However, no one recognized the person, and no solid leads were ever found. The idea that the killer lived in the attic or secretly watched the family for days became one of the most frightening theories in the case. One of the most mysterious aspects of the Hinterkaifeck case was the killer's calm behavior after the murders. The animals were fed, the cows were milked, and someone continued to smoke at the kitchen table. Neighbors even reported smoke coming from the chimney the day after the murders. This meant the killer was comfortable staying in the home, possibly waiting for the right moment to escape. This eerie sense of normalcy made investigators believe the murderer was methodical and possibly familiar with farm life. When authorities finally arrived on the farm, they were stunned by how well the crime scene had been maintained. The killer had swept the barn floor and covered the bodies with hay. The house showed signs of someone living inside after the murders. Yet there were no fingerprints, no murder weapon left behind, and no clear footprints leading away from the property. The farm stood silent, frozen in time, as if the killer had vanished into thin air. As news spread, Villagers from surrounding towns gathered outside Hinterkaifeck in shock. The brutality of the murders and the strange circumstances terrified the entire region. Rumors spread quickly. Some believed it was a wandering killer. Others suspected a personal vendetta. Still others whispered about supernatural forces or a cursed farm. But despite hundreds of interviews, no suspect was ever arrested. The case grew colder by the day. Investigators explored multiple theories: a former farmhand seeking revenge, a jealous neighbor, a soldier traumatized after World War I, or even a family member with a hidden motive. Each suspect had potential reasons, but also strong alibis or missing evidence. Files were reopened several times over the decades, but every lead eventually collapsed. The deeper investigators looked, the more impossible the case seemed to solve. To this day, the Hinterkaifeck murders remain one of Europe's most haunting unsolved crimes. Generations of investigators, historians, and true crime researchers have attempted to uncover the truth, yet no definitive answer has ever been found. The chilling footsteps in the snow, the silent nights in the attic, and the killer's strange calm after the murders leave behind a story that feels more like a nightmare than reality. The farm was eventually demolished, but the mystery still lives on, whispered in Germany, as one of the darkest legends of the 20th century.